She crossed states to kill for love, the Sakiyna Thompson case. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It was 5:12 a.m. when the first flight from Newark lifted off the runway. The sky was still dark. The passengers were half awake, scrolling their phones, drinking bitter coffee. Among them sat a woman staring straight ahead, her hands gripping the armrest like she was bracing for impact. Her name was Sakiyna Thompson, 31 years old, from New Jersey. No criminal record, no history of violence. But inside, something had cracked wide open. Her phone buzzed in her lap. She didn't look at it. She already knew who it was, or rather, who it wasn't. Her ex. He wasn't answering anymore. That used to be her man. Her future. The one she planned everything around. Now he was in Florida, smiling in pictures with another woman. A woman named Kayla Hodgson, 23, bright eyes. A small-town Florida girl who loved animals and beach sunsets. Sakiyna had seen the photos online. Kayla kissing his cheek, him holding her hand. Every image felt like a knife twisting deeper. For weeks, Sakiyna tried to move on. She told her friends she was fine. She posted selfies, smiling through the pain. But behind the phone screen, her world was collapsing. That flight from New Jersey wasn't just a trip. It was an act of finality. A journey fueled by heartbreak and rage. 2 months earlier, the story began with love, or something that felt like it. Sakiyna met him, Marcus, through mutual friends. He was charming, funny, the kind of man who made you feel seen. They clicked fast. Texting turned into dates. Dates turned into late nights together, laughing and talking like they'd known each other for years. But Marcus had a complicated past, and Sakiyna had trust issues. Arguments started small. Where are you? Why didn't you call? Who's that girl commenting on your post? Marcus would sigh. You're overthinking again, Sakiyna. But she wasn't overthinking. At least not in her mind. She was protecting what was hers. The fights got worse. She'd call him dozens of times in one night. He'd block her, then unblock her, then block her again. Love turned into obsession. And then one day he was gone. Moved to Florida. Started over. New job. New life. New woman. Her name, Kayla. The news hit Sakiyna like a storm. She found out through Instagram. A photo of Marcus and Kayla at a beach bar. Caption, "New beginnings." She froze. The drink in her hand spilled onto her phone. Her chest burned. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. Kayla, smiling in every post, wearing the necklace Marcus once bought her, standing in front of the same car they used to drive. That's when something inside Sakiyna shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was fury. She began searching. Kayla's Facebook, her address, her workplace, everything. Friends noticed she wasn't herself. One coworker said later, it was like she was living in her head, always talking about getting closure. Closure. That word haunted her. She told herself she just wanted to talk, face to face, to make him understand what he'd done, to make her understand who she was messing with. But deep down, she knew this trip wasn't about talking. It was about control. Back on the plane, the cabin lights dimmed. A baby cried a few rows behind her. Sakiyna's eyes stayed fixed on the dark window. She imagined Marcus's face when he saw her again. Would he be shocked? Afraid? Would he still call her crazy? Her carry-on bag sat under the seat. Inside, clothes, makeup, and something heavy wrapped in fabric. She had rehearsed this moment over and over in her mind. What she'd say, how she'd look, how it would all finally end. The flight attendant smiled as she passed by. First time to Florida? Sakiyna forced a small smile. Something like that. When the plane landed in Fort Lauderdale, the air hit her like heat from an oven. Florida sun, thick humidity, felt like another world. She rented a silver Nissan and checked into a motel near the highway. Cheap, plain, forgettable. Exactly what she wanted. She took a shower, stared at herself in the mirror. Her reflection looked hollow, but her mind was clear. That night, she drove by Marcus's house. It was quiet, A small home with a white fence and palm trees. Kayla's car was in the driveway. She parked down the street, watched for hours. Lights turned on, then off. She never went to the door. Not that night. The next day, she followed Kayla. To her job, to the store, to the gym. Every move, every stop. She learned her patterns, her habits, her weaknesses. It became an obsession again. Only now it was focused entirely on Kayla. A week later, Marcus proposed to Kayla. The photo went viral among their friends. Kayla's smile beamed across social media. Her caption, "Forever starts now." Sakiyna saw it instantly, and something inside her snapped. She paced her motel room for hours, shaking, screaming into her hands. How could he replace her like that? Then she stopped crying. Her breathing slowed, her voice steadied, and she whispered, "She took my life. Now I'll take hers." The night of the murder, it was quiet, a Florida night thick with crickets and humidity. Kayla was home alone. Marcus was working late. At 10:46 p.m., neighbors heard a knock on the door, then shouting, then silence. When police arrived hours later, Kayla's body was found near the porch. Multiple stab wounds. No sign of forced entry. Marcus came running, screaming her name, collapsing to his knees. He couldn't understand. Who would do this? Why Kayla? But the detectives noticed something odd. A rental car had been spotted earlier in the area. Out-of-state plates. Witnesses remembered a woman, medium build, brown hair, walking near the house that night. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station confirmed it. There she was, Sakiyna, calm, focused, buying gas and a drink just hours before the murder. By the next morning, she was already on her way back north. Back in New Jersey, she thought she'd gotten away with it. But technology told the truth. Phone records, surveillance cameras, toll booth data, GPS from the rental car. Piece by piece, the timeline came together. Detectives could see her journey from Newark to Florida, her movements around Kayla's home, and her route back after the killing. When they showed up at her door, she didn't run. She just stared at them and said quietly, "I knew you'd come." Even in court, Sakiyna never denied being there. But she claimed she didn't mean to kill her. "It just happened," she said. "She provoked me." The jury didn't buy it. The evidence was overwhelming. The motive, pure jealousy. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As she was led away, Marcus didn't look at her. He couldn't. The woman he once loved had destroyed everything. And Kayla, the innocent girl who just fell in love, became another victim of obsession. The story spread fast. Social media called it the jealous flight murder. Some said it was a crime of passion. Others said it was pure evil. But everyone agreed on one thing: love can turn deadly when you can't let go. The world saw her as a monster, cold, calculated, a woman who flew across states to kill out of jealousy. But to understand why, you have to go back. Long before Florida, before Kayla, before Marcus, back to where the cracks first began. Paterson, New Jersey, the city where Sakiyna Thompson grew up. It was rough, loud, alive, a place where you learned to survive early. Her childhood was complicated. A single mother working 2 jobs, a father she barely remembered, and a home filled with silence and slammed doors. Sakiyna was bright, ambitious. She wanted more than what her neighborhood offered. But love, that's what she craved most. Not attention, not admiration. Love, something deep, unshakable, safe. Her friends used to say she was loyal to a fault. Once she cared about someone, she never let go. Even when they hurt her, even when they left. That kind of loyalty can look beautiful until it becomes obsession. In her 20s, she went from one broken relationship to another. Each one ended the same way: betrayal, anger, heartbreak. She'd give everything. They'd move on. She'd be left piecing herself back together. And every time, she promised herself, "Next time, I won't let it end like this." When she met Marcus, that promise turned dangerous. Marcus Green, 33 years old, charismatic, the kind of man who could walk into a room and everyone noticed. He worked construction during the day, DJ'd on weekends. Fun-loving, easygoing. And when he wanted you, he made you feel like the only woman in the world. That's what pulled Sakiyna in. The way he looked at her, the way he talked, he made her feel chosen. But Marcus wasn't looking for forever. He was just living. And Sakiyna wanted a lifetime. The first few months were heaven. Trips, gifts, late-night talks about dreams and futures. But soon cracks appeared. Marcus started going out more, stopping by less. His phone always on silent. She'd text. No reply. She'd call. Straight to voicemail. And that's when the panic would rise in her chest. That feeling that he was slipping away. She'd drive by his place, just to see if he was home. She'd scroll his social media, looking for signs. New likes, new comments, new faces. Every woman who smiled in his direction became an enemy. Marcus would say, "Why don't you trust me?" And she'd reply, "Because I know how men are." It became toxic, explosive, every argument louder than the last. Neighbors heard them shouting. Once, she threw his phone against the wall. Another time, he packed his bags and left for a week. But he always came back. Until one day, he didn't. The breakup. Marcus said he needed space. He said he couldn't breathe anymore. He said, "I love you, but this isn't love." To her, it was betrayal. To him, it was survival. He packed up, moved to Florida, started fresh. Sakiyna begged him to stay. She cried. She promised to change. But Marcus had already made up his mind. When he blocked her number, that's when she lost control. She spent hours refreshing his profile, watching his follower count go up. And then, weeks later, there she was, Kayla Hodgson, young, sweet, smiling in every photo. Everything Sakiyna used to be before life hardened her. That's when the jealousy began to rot into obsession. She started telling her friends, "He played me. He lied to me. She can have him, but she'll regret it." First, her friends brushed it off. Breakup talk, angry words, nothing more. But then her tone changed. She wasn't venting anymore. She was planning. She Googled Kayla's name, found her Facebook, her job at a dental office, her favorite coffee shop. She saved photos, wrote down addresses, plotted routes. Her mind had crossed into something dark, a place where reason no longer lived. February 2021. One night, her friend Tanya came by. Sakiyna was sitting on the couch, staring at her phone. The TV was on, but she wasn't watching. "Girl, what's wrong with you lately?" Tanya asked. "You don't go out, you don't laugh. You're obsessed with this man." Sakiyna turned to her, eyes cold. "He ruined my life." They both did. Tanya tried to talk sense into her, tried to pull her back to reality. But Sakiyna wasn't hearing it. "She took everything I had," she said, "and I'm going to make sure she knows what that feels like." Tanya laughed nervously, thinking it was just talk. But it wasn't. In the weeks that followed, Sakiyna started saving money. She stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. She deleted old photos, old texts, everything that made her look human. Her coworkers said she seemed driven, focused, but not in a good way. It was like she was preparing for something big. The purchase. She went to a pawn shop in Newark, bought a knife, a small, concealable blade. She paid cash, no questions asked. Then she booked the flight, one-way ticket to Florida. Her search history showed it all. Flights to Fort Lauderdale, Kayla Hodgson address, how to erase fingerprints. The FBI would later use those searches as part of the case. But at the time, she didn't care. In her mind, this was justice, payback, closure, the arrival. She landed in Florida like a woman on a mission, rented a car, drove straight to Marcus's neighborhood, parked 2 streets away. She sat there for hours watching their house. Kayla came out once, taking trash to the curb. She looked peaceful, happy, completely unaware that someone was watching her with burning hatred. That night, Sakiyna wrote in her notebook, "She doesn't deserve what's mine." It wasn't about Marcus anymore. Not really. It was about control, power, dominance. If she couldn't have peace, no one would. The confrontation. According to court testimony, Sakiyna knocked on Kayla's door just after 10 p.m. Neighbors heard raised voices. Then silence. Police believe Kayla recognized her from social media. There was no forced entry. She likely opened the door thinking it was a civil conversation. But what followed was chaos. Kayla's final moments were filled with confusion and fear. Sakiyna's rage had finally exploded. And when it was over, she stood there, trembling, staring at what she'd done. Then she walked away, calm, methodical, got in her car, and drove off into the night. Back in New Jersey, she tried to act normal, posted on Facebook like nothing happened, even went out with friends a week later. But detectives were already tracking her. License plate readers, phone pings, cameras. It was all there every step she took. When they knocked on her door, she didn't deny it. She just said, "I wanted to talk to her." Things went wrong. But the evidence told a different story. In court, the prosecution painted a chilling picture. A woman consumed by jealousy. A plan executed across state lines. Cold-blooded, deliberate, and merciless. The defense tried to argue mental breakdown, that she snapped in a moment of emotional collapse. But the jury saw the months of preparation. The purchases, the travel, the surveillance. It wasn't an accident. It was obsession turned deadly. When the verdict came, guilty of first-degree murder, she didn't cry. She just looked down, hands clasped, whispering something under her breath. Some said she was praying. Others said she was talking to Marcus. Marcus never spoke publicly, but close friends said he was shattered. He blamed himself. "If I'd handled it differently," he said once, "maybe Kayla would still be alive." But the truth was, he couldn't have known how far Sakiyna would go. Nobody could. Inside prison, Sakiyna spends her days in a maximum security facility. No makeup, no phone, no mirrors, just time. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It started with a single ping, a small blip on a cell tower in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That ping would become the first clue that cracked everything open. Police didn't know who had killed Kayla Hodgson yet. All they had was a young woman found dead in her apartment, and a mystery that screamed personal. There were no signs of forced entry, no robbery, no sexual assault. This wasn't random. This was emotional, targeted. Someone wanted Kayla dead. When detectives arrived, they noticed something chilling. Kayla's phone was gone, so was her laptop. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They wanted her voice silenced, her messages erased, her story buried. But what the killer didn't know was that technology remembers everything. Detective Carla Ruiz led the investigation. A 15-year veteran with sharp instincts and no patience for killers who thought they were smarter than the system. She looked at Kayla's lifeless body and said quietly, "This wasn't random. Someone loved her or hated her." The first 48 hours were chaos. Reporters camped outside, neighbors terrified, Marcus devastated. He told police everything. About the breakup, about Sakiyna, about the calls, the texts, the threats. And when he mentioned her name, Detective Ruiz wrote it down. Sakiyna Thompson. The name meant nothing then, but it would soon mean everything. They started digging. Marcus said she lived in New Jersey. He hadn't seen her in months. She'd been blocked on every platform. So how did she end up in Florida? Detective Ruiz requested airline logs, checked flight manifests from Newark to Fort Lauderdale for that week. And there it was. Passenger S. Thompson. One-way ticket, paid in cash. Her stomach turned. "Find out if she rented a car," she told her team. Took hours, but the system finally pinged back. A rental company near the airport. Compact vehicle. Rented under her name. Returned 2 days later. The car had been cleaned, vacuumed, wiped down, spotless. But the team didn't stop there. Forensics ran luminol tests inside. The blue glow revealed it all. Faint smears. Tiny drops. Blood. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but science never lies. DNA testing confirmed it. The blood matched Kayla Hodgson. Detective Ruiz stood there, staring at the report. She whispered, "We've got her." But before they could move in, they needed more. They needed proof of intent. They subpoenaed her cell phone records, and what they found was haunting. Google searches, flights to Fort Lauderdale same day, how to track someone's location without them knowing, how long does DNA last on skin, how to erase fingerprints. Then, the night before the murder, Kayla Hodgson address. Every search, every word, like pieces of a confession typed out in plain sight. But the digital trail didn't stop there. They checked security cameras from the neighborhood, and there she was, clear as day, a woman in dark clothing walking up Kayla's driveway. Timestamp, 10:02 p.m. 15 minutes later, the motion sensor light turned on again, then off, then nothing. The next time Kayla's phone registered any activity was a location-off signal sent from a nearby dumpster. Detectives recovered the phone from a trash bin 5 blocks away. Smashed screen, battery missing, but the SIM card was intact. Forensics pulled data, text messages, photos, call logs. One stood out, a message Kayla sent to Marcus just before her death. "There's a woman at my door. Says she knows you." That message became the cornerstone of the case. A dying woman's final words. A witness statement sent in text form. Detective Ruiz's eyes burned as she read it. She knew exactly what it meant. Kayla never stood a chance. Meanwhile, in New Jersey, Sakiyna had no idea how close they were. She posted on Facebook like nothing happened. Selfies, quotes about healing and karma. One post read, "People get what they deserve. Always." It was chilling, arrogant, and it sealed her fate. By March 2021, detectives had everything they needed. Flight records, rental car, DNA, security footage, digital evidence. It was airtight, but they wanted one more piece. A confession. They tracked her to a small apartment in Patterson. It was early morning when SWAT moved in. The sound of boots. A loud knock. "FBI, open up." She froze. For a second, she didn't move. Then panic. She tried to run, but it was over before it began. Handcuffs, Miranda rights, and silence. Detective Ruiz walked in and said, "You flew across states to kill her, didn't you?" Sakiyna didn't answer. She just stared at the floor. Ruiz added, "She texted Marcus right before you did it. We know everything." That's when Sakiyna whispered, "She took him from me." At the station, the interrogation lasted hours. She denied it at first, said she just wanted to talk, that things got out of hand. But the timeline, the planning, the searches, it all proved otherwise. Detectives presented photos, the flight receipt, the car rental, the knife. Her hands started shaking. And then she said quietly, "I didn't mean to kill her. I just wanted her scared." It was the closest thing to a confession they'd ever get. The trial, courtroom packed. Reporters lined the walls. Every detail felt cinematic. A woman who turned heartbreak into homicide. The prosecution painted her as obsessive, manipulative. A woman who saw love as possession. They showed jurors the Google searches, the surveillance footage, the blood evidence, the text message from Kayla. Each exhibit hit like a hammer. And every time her face flashed on screen, the jury stared in silence. Her defense argued temporary insanity, said she'd been emotionally destroyed, that Marcus led her on, that she snapped. But the evidence didn't show a snap. It showed planning. It showed revenge. A psychologist for the prosecution testified. She believed Marcus was an object she owned. Kayla represented theft. In her mind, this wasn't murder. It was reclamation. The verdict came after just 4 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder. Sentence: life without parole. Sakiyna didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't say a word. She just turned to the judge and said, "Love makes people do crazy things." After the trial, Detective Ruiz stood outside the courthouse. Reporters surrounded her, shoving microphones in her face. One asked, "What do you make of the motive?" Ruiz replied, "Obsession. It wasn't love. It was control. She didn't want him. She wanted to own him. Her words went viral. Clips spread across social media. Podcasts, documentaries, and true crime channels picked up the case. It became known as the jealous flight murder. But behind the headlines, the human cost remained. Kayla's parents sat silently in the courtroom that day. Her mother clutched a photo of her daughter, smiling, bright, alive. When the verdict was read, she whispered, "Now she can rest." Marcus wasn't there. He'd moved away. He couldn't face it. He told one reporter months later, "She didn't just kill Kayla. She killed every good memory I had." Even in prison, Sakiyna stayed quiet, never apologized, never wrote a letter, never spoke about that night again. But one guard later said that she kept a small notebook. On the first page, one sentence was written in neat handwriting. "If I can't have peace, neither can you." No one knows if she meant Marcus, or Kayla, or herself. Technology had been the silent witness. Every click, every ping, every footprint she thought she erased, it told the truth she tried to bury. And in the end, it wasn't a confession that put her away. It was data, cold, precise, unforgiving. It was a warm morning in May when Sakiyna Thompson rolled her suitcase through the crowded terminal at LaGuardia Airport. She wore a loose hoodie, dark jeans, and sunglasses that covered her tired eyes. From a distance, she looked like any other traveler, someone heading south for a weekend getaway. But this was no vacation. This was a mission. Inside her chest, her heart pounded with a fury that had been building for weeks. Her phone had been silent for hours, but the images were burned into her memory. Kayla Hodgson laughing on the beach, holding hands with Brandon, the man Sakiyna once believed would marry her. It wasn't just betrayal that haunted her. It was humiliation, and humiliation to Sakiyna felt like death. She booked a one-way ticket to Florida the night before. She told no one where she was going. Not her sister, not her co-workers. She left behind a half-eaten dinner on the counter, her cat without food, and a text from her mother that simply said, "Call me." She never did. When she landed in Fort Lauderdale, the air was thick and hot. Palm trees swayed under a bright sun that did little to calm her storm. She rented a black Nissan and sat behind the wheel for several minutes, her fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly they turned white. She replayed everything in her mind. The moment Brandon stopped answering her calls. The day she saw Kayla's photo tagged with his name. The caption that read, "My everything red heart." Her stomach twisted. Her breathing grew shallow. This wasn't just a breakup. This was betrayal at the deepest level. In her mind, she wasn't traveling to confront. She was traveling to reclaim what was hers. Before leaving New York, she packed carefully. 2 changes of clothes, a burner phone, and inside her checked luggage, something wrapped in a towel, hidden between jeans and a hair straightener, a 9mm handgun, unregistered, cold, waiting. The drive from the airport to Kayla Hodgson's apartment took less than an hour, but to Sakiyna it felt like an eternity. Every red light, every song on the radio, every Florida license plate that passed her by felt like a sign, mocking her. She gritted her teeth and muttered under her breath, "She took everything from me." Her GPS announced, "You've arrived." The apartment complex was quiet. A row of palm trees lined the street. Children's bikes were scattered across the sidewalk. It was the kind of peaceful neighborhood where people felt safe. But that illusion was about to shatter. She parked across the street, turned off the engine, and sat in silence. Her eyes fixed on the front door. She could see movement through the blinds, a figure pacing, talking on the phone. It was her, Kayla. Hours passed. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in streaks of red and orange. The world softened, but inside the car, the tension grew sharper. Sakiyna's hands trembled. She whispered, "You don't get to take what's mine." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it. A photo of Brandon and Kayla together, smiling, holding hands, at a restaurant she once loved. Something snapped. A white-hot rage surged through her chest. She started the car. pulled her hood over her head, and stepped out. At 8:37 p.m., neighbors reported hearing loud arguing near Kayla's apartment. At first, they thought it was a couple's fight, nothing unusual. But then came the scream, high-pitched, terrified, and then silence. What happened in those next few minutes would later be pieced together by police, forensic teams, and phone records. But no one truly knows the words exchanged between Sakiyna and Kayla that night. Only the echoes. According to investigators, Sakiyna knocked on the door. When Kayla answered, confusion filled her face. She recognized her from photos. "Brandon's ex, can I help you?" she asked, cautious but polite. Sakiyna's eyes were wild, her breathing uneven. She stepped forward. "You ruined everything," she hissed. Kayla froze. "What are you talking about? You know who I am. I think you should leave." But Sakiyna didn't leave. She pulled something from her bag. A flash of metal. A gun. Kayla screamed and tried to slam the door, but Sakiyna forced it open. Neighbors later reported hearing 2 gunshots. Then silence. When police arrived minutes later, Kayla was found near the entryway, fatally shot. The shooter was gone. Witnesses saw a dark car speeding away. Tire marks. Shell casings. Chaos. Brandon arrived at the scene later that night, escorted by officers. He collapsed when he saw the yellow tape. He couldn't believe it. The woman he once loved had murdered the woman he loved now. Meanwhile, Sakiyna was already on the move. She dumped the gun near a gas station dumpster, changed her shirt, and switched off her phone. For the next 12 hours, she disappeared, no trace, no signal, no contact. But technology would soon catch up to her. Surveillance footage from the airport, cameras from toll booths, credit card records from the rental car. It all led back to one woman, Sakiyna Thompson. Back in New York, her mother woke up to a dozen missed calls. When she turned on the TV, her daughter's name was everywhere. The words "wanted for murder" flashed across the screen. She dropped the phone and cried out, "No, not my baby." By the time federal marshals tracked her down in Newark, New Jersey, Sakiyna was hiding at a friend's apartment. She looked calm when they arrested her, almost detached, as if the reality hadn't sunk in. When asked why she did it, she simply said, "She took what was mine." The courtroom would later hear a different story, of a woman spiraling under rejection, jealousy, and obsession. But in that moment, when officers led her out in handcuffs, all the emotions she had bottled up, love, anger, pain, finally seemed to fade into one thing: emptiness. As she sat in the back of the police car, her reflection glared back from the glass window. The Florida sun was rising again. It painted the sky gold, just like it had the morning she landed. But now it looked cruel, unforgiving. She whispered something, barely audible. "I didn't mean to." But deep down, she knew she had. And now there was no going back. The courtroom was silent. Not the usual kind of silence, this was heavy. A silence that carried grief, anger, disbelief, and something else: finality. It had been 18 months since the night Kayla Hodgson was killed in her Florida apartment. And now, the woman responsible, Sakiyna Thompson, sat at the defendant's table, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her once straight posture was gone. She looked smaller, fragile. But behind that stillness was a storm, a woman trying to convince herself she was still human. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The bailiff called out, "All rise. The court is now in session." Sakiyna's hands trembled slightly. She didn't look at the gallery. She didn't dare. Because there, in the second row, sat Kayla's mother, her father, and Brandon, the man she once loved. Brandon looked hollow. Not angry, not even sad anymore. Just empty, as if grief had carved out everything inside him and left a shell. The prosecutor began. He spoke with calm precision, his voice echoing through the courtroom like the sound of judgment itself. On May 12, 2022, the defendant, Ms. Sakiyna Thompson, boarded a flight from New York to Florida. She did not travel for business. She did not travel for pleasure. She traveled to confront and ultimately to kill. He paused and lifted a photo. Kayla's smile filled the screen. bright, innocent, full of life. She was 23 years old. She had a future. She had plans. She had love. The prosecutor turned towards Sakiyna. You took all of that from her. The defense attorney tried to paint a different picture. They said Sakiyna was a victim of mental collapse, that she suffered from emotional instability after being abandoned and replaced. They argued that she had snapped, a momentary loss of control, not premeditated murder. But the evidence told another story. The plane ticket, the rented car, the gun she carried across state lines, the text messages she sent to friends days before the killing, messages that said, "She's going to regret this, and he'll see what he lost." Every word, every action, every step pointed to intent. When the prosecution rested, the judge called for a recess. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Cameras clicked from the press section. Outside, the courthouse steps were filled with reporters. Headlines across the country screamed, "She flew to kill for love. Jealous rage turns deadly. Obsession ends in murder." When court resumed, Brandon was called to testify. The moment he took the stand, you could feel the tension rise. He avoided eye contact with Sakiyna, but she couldn't stop staring at him. Her lips quivered, her eyes glossy with tears. He spoke softly, almost trembling. She was intense. First, I thought it was love, but it wasn't. It was control. He described how their relationship had gone from passionate to toxic in a matter of months. How she checked his phone, showed up at his job, threatened to hurt herself if he ever left. "I tried to move on," he said. "I just didn't think she'd come after Kayla." His voice cracked. For the first time, he looked directly at Sakiyna, and in that instant, her face broke. Her tears came fast, but no one felt sympathy. Not even the defense team. The next witness was Kayla's mother, Deborah Hodgson. She carried a framed photo of her daughter to the stand. Every step she took was heavy, deliberate. When she sat down, the courtroom felt smaller, as if everyone was being pulled into her grief. She looked at the jury and said quietly, "My daughter was the kindest person I ever knew. She didn't deserve this." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. She was the type of person who forgave everyone. I think if she could, she'd even forgive the woman who did this. The courtroom went still. Even the judge looked down for a moment. Then came the forensic evidence. Ballistics, surveillance, GPS tracking from the rental car, flight records. It was airtight. No mystery, no confusion, no room for doubt. The jury's faces told the story before the verdict was ever read. After 2 days of deliberation, the courtroom filled again for the final time. The foreman stood. The air felt heavy. "On the charge of first-degree murder," he said, "we find the defendant guilty." Gasps filled the room. Kayla's mother closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, God." Brandon stared straight ahead, unmoving. And Sakiyna, she froze. No outburst, no denial, just stillness. For the first time, she looked like she understood what she had done. Not just that she was caught, but that she had destroyed lives. And for what? The sentencing came weeks later. The judge spoke slowly, his tone grave. "Ms. Thompson, you traveled across states to take the life of a young woman who posed no threat to you. You planned, prepared, and executed your actions with precision. That is not a crime of passion. That is murder." He leaned forward slightly. "The court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." A sob broke from the back of the courtroom. Deborah Hodgson leaned on her husband's shoulder, weeping. Sakiyna stared ahead, eyes hollow. No tears, no plea, no emotion left to show. The deputies placed handcuffs on her wrists. The metallic click echoed through the room. That sound, cold, final, was the sound of her life ending in chains. As she was let out, she turned her head once. Her gaze found Brandon. For a moment, time froze. He didn't look back. He couldn't. And just like that, she was gone. Through the door, down the hallway, into a future defined by concrete walls and locked steel doors. In the months that followed, the story spread far beyond Florida. Podcasts, documentaries, headlines. She crossed states to kill for love. She flew to Florida and never came back. It became one of those modern cautionary tales. A story about how love can twist into obsession, how heartbreak can turn into horror. Inside Lowell Correctional Institution, Sakiyna adapted to prison life. She worked in the laundry room, kept to herself, rarely spoke to anyone. Inmates said she spent hours staring at photos from her old life. Pictures of her and Brandon, taken years before the murder. She never mentioned Kayla's name, not once. One day, during a routine interview with a prison psychologist, she was asked a simple question. Do you regret it? For a long time, she didn't answer. Then, she said softly, I regret loving someone who made me forget who I was. Meanwhile, Kayla's family started a foundation in her name, the Kayla Hodgson Memorial Fund, dedicated to helping women escape toxic and violent relationships. They spoke at colleges and events, sharing her story not as a tragedy, but as a warning. Deborah often said, if her story can save one life, then her death won't be in vain. Brandon eventually moved away. He deleted his social media. He stopped giving interviews. But locals said they sometimes saw him visiting Kayla's grave on her birthday, leaving a single sunflower, the flower she loved most. He never remarried, never spoke publicly about the case again. And so, the story of Sakiyna Thompson and Kayla Hodgson became another entry in America's long list of crimes born from jealousy, pain, and obsession. A reminder that love, when poisoned by control and rage, can destroy everything it touches. A flight from New York to Florida, 2 lives intertwined, 1 moment of rage that ended everything. In the end, all that was left was silence. And a question that still haunts everyone who's ever heard the story. How far would you go for love? For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.